Hey everyone, this is Nevin Gusak, host of the Patriotic Populist, co-host here. Got Herschel Miller once again. Hey, how you doing, Herschel? What's going on?
Oh, I'm doing good, Nevin. It's been a fun week. Glad I got that job wrapped up that I was on. Get to spend a couple of weeks home with my family. Life is good.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, I can't complain. I had a nice day with my girlfriend, great dinner, white pizza. I never liked white pizza before when I was a lot younger, and she had me try it. White pizza, white garden pizza. Wash it down with a nice soda, some wings, and I had some leftover salad that she made. It was fan freaking tastic. Great meal. And tonight, by the way, I have a nice hot cup of decaf coffee. I'm taking a little break from the spirits and beer for this evening. Maybe next weekend we'll break out a Corona or something or another. So yeah, and then I get to see my daughter tomorrow, which I'm excited about. Get to see my family, do a drive-by visit because we're socially distancing. So, and then it's back to work next week. So all is good in my neighborhood.
Well, I'm here representing the good old American black coffee brand. Now, Nevin, explain this to a poor hillbilly. What is white pizza? Because I don't think I've ever in my entire life seen white pizza.
Well, it's this petty bourgeois construction of a bunch of urban city slickers. Um, Basically, what it is the crust is infused with like this garlic seasoning, first of all, which gives it a great taste. And then you have this like mozzarella cheese, and then you have each slice will have in the center this ricotta cheese, and then you'll have different vegetables like the dried tomato and whatnot, and some other like green vegetables on there. It is light, it's not heavy, it's fantastic. It's great washed down with a chaser of any soda of your choice. I prefer Coke Zero because there's no calories in there. And then if you have some nice fat chicken wings, preferably those drumettes, either garlic parmesan or mild buffalo flavor, you're in business. That's going to be a meal fit for kings and queens.
Well, if I ever get on down to Florida, I might have to try that. Now, I'm going to take your word on it. You being a New Yorker and all, and we all know that New York is the place for pizza. Chicago can just they can take second place if they want. It's okay. Well, we
Yeah,
give out participation
Chicago. I don't want to
trophies.
say because I don't want to piss off our potential viewers in Chicago. So I'll keep my opinions to myself.
Oh hell, if they're gonna get scared that easy, if there's a good old debate on who's got the pizza, man, I just don't think they got the stomach for this type of movement we got building right here. Because we need people that can be made fun of a little bit, and make fun of their crappy deep dish pizza from up there.
I mean, a deep dish pizza. I mean, what is that? The only thing deep dish I like is my pies, like pecan pie. I mean, I don't want deep dish. Just want a thin crust pizza or even a thick doughy crust. And then I have the cheese. You got vegetables, chicken, meats, or this white pizza, which I love, which is light but filling. I mean, you can't go wrong. Or you could wash it down with wine, a nice red wine, or a beer of your choice. Now, my favorite beers has to be Stella Artois. The
It's
bet,
good beer.
great beer. That is some good shit right there. Wash that down with a steak, pizza, Italian hero. Mwah.
Oh, must be a walking stereotype. Budweiser. Now, people make fun of Budweiser, and I get it. It's not the greatest beer ever developed. It's not the best tasting. It's not the most fulfilling. To me, I just like it's a good tasting all around, not going to break the bank beer. But if I had to pick my drink of choice, I would probably go with either Dos Equis or maybe Corona. I've always liked Corona.
Corona's a good beer.
Yeah.
You can't go wrong. Just stick the lime in there and whatnot. Give it that flavor.
Oh,
You're
little
good to go.
salt bottles too. You can't forget them. Just shake a little bit of that beer salt in there.
Oh yes, yes, of course. A staple
Yeah.
ingredient right there.
So, Nevin, what do you got on the plate for tonight? I know that we're not just going to sit here for the next hour talking about our favorite food of choice, as much as I would like that.
Oh, I love talking about food. I love food as much as my exercise and my girlfriend and my daughter. I just love it. It's everybody likes to talk about food. I'll tell you, food is one thing that can bridge any political divide. I'll tell
I
you that
believe
right
that.
now. What do I have? Well, I got a bunch of things to talk about tonight. I'm going to be, throwing some fun facts, some quotes I've been posting based on the news, current events, some history. And, as we talked about offline, we're going to do that as a format for the show from now on. I think it will give us a good rhythm. So I want to start off with this quote, which has a lot of bearing for current events right now. There's a guy called Nick Hanauer. He's based in Seattle, Washington. He's a venture capitalist. I think he's worth like well over $900 million. He's like almost a billionaire. And he's an advocate for a more reformed version of capitalism. He has a podcast called Pitchfork Economics. I really recommend it for those of you who are listening. It's a great show. Nick Hanauer is an interesting personality too, as well. He's kind of down to earth and kind of earthy like you and I. So he posted on Facebook back on October 9th, 2020, a real good quote that really summarizes what the hell is going on in America here. And Hanauer said, here's the truth. This whole debate between socialism and capitalism, it's bullshit. The real debate is about whether government works for you or for rich people in big corporations. That's it. What are your thoughts about that, Herschel?
Well, Nevin, this is the thing that I've been formulating a belief on for a while. Liberals of all various stripes, the conservative, economic liberal type people, that free markets and all that, or the anarchist, or any of them people that are the small government types. And I'm no big government guy per se. I don't want some authoritarian Orwellian state stepping down on your throat. But this is what I'll say. No matter what style system or otherwise, a government or economic system you create, you will always have somebody in charge. And you just can't get away with that. No system that has ever existed throughout all of human history hasn't had a leader or a small group of leaders at the top. So these people that are advocating for, this free market fundamentalism, saying that just live your life the way you want, nobody will tell you what to do. Well, I tell you what, you turn on the news or you look on Facebook and you see the way that corporations and companies have been acting these last couple of weeks. They're no better than some authoritarian government halfway around the world. But the only difference between them and the corporation is the corporation, you got no chance of changing them. And look, I'm not an advocate for a lot of the conspiracy theories that's been floating around in the conservative world over the last couple of years. And it's got to a point of ridiculousness. I'll give you that. But what Facebook, Google, Reddit, all of these other channels have done is, it's that old thing that if they can do it to them, they'll do it to you. Me and Nevin, I don't think me and you have broke any YouTube guidelines since me and you've started, but we could wake up tomorrow and just, our channel could be gone. Everything that we've worked for could be gone. So what I say is, like you said, if it's working for you, or if it's working to protect these big corporations. And I think that our government over the last, at least since Reagan, but you could go back further than that, has undisputably worked for the special interest and the elites and the stockbrokers and the hedge funders and the import exporters. And well, this is what you get for it. What are your thoughts on that, Nevin?
No, I agree. I mean, and remember, if YouTube yanks our show, for example, that's not big government. That's big corporate America, if you will. So, my theory on this, or my viewpoint on this, is simple. Is simply that the problem is not big government or small government. It's who controls the government, and as Nick Hanauer says, who it works for. Because different individuals populate the government with different intentions. All governments are not made the same. All governments are not equal. They each contain ruling groups. They contain representatives with all kinds of different agendas. So the government in Germany, for example, or Norway or Sweden in certain ways would be considered too, quote, big to our conservative or libertarian, or I'm going to say the word because I'm going to play fast and loose and let my hair down, to our teabagger friends. Countries like Germany or France, or in some ways the UK, certainly Scandinavia, are considered big government because of their social programs. But are they totalitarian governments? No. Then you have North Korea, which is entirely different intentions. They have entirely different goals than the fundamentally social democratic capitalist economies and governments, I should say, in Europe. Not all governments are created the same. It all depends on the intentions of the representatives or the ruling groups within each government throughout the world. And really, Nick Hanauer, his quote, his observation that I just read earlier, is backed up by reality. And I'll just simply state there was from 2014 a study that was conducted by Princeton University professor Martin Gillens and Northwestern University political science Benjamin Page, and they did a study of the voting patterns of behavior in Congress. And they concluded that the preferences of the average American appear to have only a minuscule, near zero, statistically non-significant impact upon public policy. I mean, that sums it up. I mean, let's go through some of the policies since teabagger-in-chief Reagan was in charge, and even a little bit before Carter, some of this too as well. You had deregulation of major industries, airlines, trucking, finance. You have deregulation of foreign trade, deregulation of immigration. You have the busting of unions. Half the country is right to work. You have wages that are stagnant or falling since the 1970s. You have more people having to work multiple jobs in a family. The dad used to be the chief breadwinner. Now, in order to maintain a middle class or a lower middle class work household and standard of living, both parents have to work. You'll have national security, big business overriding national security needs of the nation through liberalized trade export controls on China, on Russia. There's not such a fun fact, but an interesting fact. How about this, Herschel? You may have heard about this. Did you know that not only can companies like Amazon recently fire people for trying to organize unions, but the expenses that employers have to pay in firing these people and putting them through legal hell, and then the employees then sue the employers, and the employers have to retain counsel, lawyers, to try and fight back. All those expenses incurred by the employer to stymie unionization efforts, it's all tax deductible. The employers actually have a term for it internally. They call it their hunting license. So, this is what I'm saying. The teabaggers, the way they frame the issue on big versus small government, no. Hanauer has actually said on other occasions that it's who the government works for, essentially. Well, he said that in the quote, but he said sometimes you need, quote, big government to handle national problems like COVID-19, for example. And then there are others where the government should take 100 steps back, because there are times where, personally, where regulations can really penalize needlessly small and medium and other independent businesses. So there has to be that sweet spot, which is what Hanauer and his other colleagues have mentioned in other emails, this sweet spot that is a midpoint between extreme collectivism, where business and individuals and civil society has no rights and they have to serve the state or an all-powerful party. And then on the other side, with the advocates of the Constitution, ma Constitution, ma free market. Well, liberty and freedom to them, basically, functionally, corporations should do whatever the hell they want, and shit all over, the American worker and the American family and the American consumer. So that's my take on that.
Well, I'll tell you, to wrap this point up, one of the things that I agree with is when you talk about who we're working for, what we're talking about is the power dynamics that are in place in our system. My biggest peeve with the libertarian system is they believe that lawsuits can solve everything. They say, yeah, just get rid of the big government, and then because of some magical concept of the non-aggression aggression principle, that we'll just sue people when we're mad at them. Now you tell me this, Nevin, you're not a poor guy. You've worked away. You good family, good job. You got a little bit of money in the bank in the stock market, I imagine.
I do.
You think you could beat, General Motors in a lawsuit ever?
Of course not, because there's no equilibrium between there. There's just no comparison between the power held by a corporate executive versus a regular Joe Schmo like you and I. That's the fallacy with a lot of the libertarians and a lot of the small government conservatives, is they don't understand that money buys better judgments from the judicial system, if you will, because you're going to be able to hire the best attorneys to argue your case, to do the research on prior case law. I mean, money talks and bullshit walks. And that's really the fact of the matter. And my response to these teabaggers that like to say, oh, just sue them and, bring them to court. Oh, yeah, right. Are you going to give me the money, Mr. Wealthy Teabagger? Huh? Are you going to do that? I don't think so. Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
I didn't hear you. Did the Koch brothers catch your tongue?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, it's like, they say, well, we don't need environmental protection laws because you could just sue them over the damages that has occurred. Now, anybody, now here's a good example. If anybody has researched the history of asbestos in the United States and the 100 years it took asbestos to go from a known harmful substance to the point that it's actually finally making people money, from how, Nevin, I'm looking for the word. It's when you pay out for damages.
Settlement.
They're making settlements out of the cancer cases of asbestos. I think it was either Aristotle or Plato wrote about the dangers of asbestos 2,000 and something years ago. It was a known fact to the medical community in the late 19th century that asbestos was harmful. But these corporations fought it and fought it and fought it and fought it and fought it. And it only took the power of the federal government and a large enough movement for them to finally be held responsible. Now, that works on the macro scale. When you've got hundreds of thousands of people that are getting cancer because of a substance that they knew was harmful, but used in the workplace anyway. That's not going to work for one guy who some oil company spilled oil on his land and poisoned his water. It's never going to work.
Especially with these conservative justices that Trump and McConnell appointed. These are individuals like Amy Coney Barrett. We're going on the Supreme Court level. They're all from the Federalist Society. And what's the other guy's name? The other one was
Kavanaugh.
Brett Kavanaugh. It was, on campaign finance, on issues related to corporate abuses, they judge overwhelmingly in favor of corporations. So these are individuals that come from the Federalist Society. Now, for those of you who don't know, the Federalist Society is like a sausage factory for conservative justices. It's like they snap out all kinds of sausages of corporate sycophantic justices and lawyers that just rule on behalf of corporations against the American people. And in fact, the Federalist Society, there were documents that were exposed on the New York Times. It was listed as their donors. And these donors were, here, Federalist Society is considered this conservative organization. But yet, liberal companies like Facebook, for example, yes, Facebook is giving money to the Federalist Society. And this goes back to my point. I'll conclude that modern conservatism and teabaggerism is nothing, for the most part, nothing but a front for corporate America. It's not to say corporate Democrats aren't either. That's a whole separate issue. So I wanted to conclude on that. I'm so glad you brought up the judicial thing.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a point that people often forget is that, like you said, money talks and bullshit walks, and everything is a power dynamic. No, I'm not talking like a leftist where everything's about institutional authority. No, what I'm saying
No, this
is
is
that,
reality.
yeah, it's the cold ass reality of the world that we lived in, that our grandparents lived in, and it's always been this way. There has never been a point in history since man first pulled a piece of gold out of the ground and decided it was worth something that there haven't been these massive disparities in power dynamics. And now that we live in a country that you've got such a small percentage hoarding so much wealth, and the rest of us left out here to fend for ourselves, there's no chance for us. I am never, I don't give a shit how rock solid a case I have, going to beat General Motors or Ford in some libertarian system. You could hardly do it now. You know, that I brought up mesothelioma to point out that even during that time, a large part of the federal government was the large government that FDR had spawned. And even then, it took, God, way too long for any settlements to finally start coming out. And it's not going to get any better under some system where you can just blatantly pay off a judge because you don't have any laws in place to stop bribery. You don't have any laws in place to stop any of that. It's a fantasy world. Libertarians love to go on and on about how, leftists and populists live in this fantasy utopia land, but my God, you do too. You live in
Yes,
some
exactly.
fantasy land where you just imagine that because you come up with a 3-letter acronym for some vague concept that all of a sudden the world's going to be a better place. No, it's not. Because the fact is that no matter how many times that we've tried to repeat this experiment, when you destroy the systems that built a country and allow these ultra wealthy people to just come in and rape the land of all of its wealth and worth and hoard it up into offshore bank accounts, it destabilizes everything. And Nevin, I know that you've got the statistics to back this up, so I'm going to ask you to start getting them ready. Look at the
Well,
rates
I wanted
that
to
that
shift. I wanted to shift gears. There's another interesting fact. I want to kind of shift gears. That's going to kind of
okay.
prove the libertarians wrong, actually, in many ways. Um, they're a really interesting statistic, and this was collected by the Joint Economic Committee of Congress from 1948. They noted that at the time, prices were only a third above 1929 levels. It found that the percentage of families with annual incomes below $1,000 dropped from half, meaning 50%, to 10.6%. Those subsisting in the $1,000, $2,000 yearly range shrank from just under 40% to 14.5%. Upward movement was everywhere. Some 20.6% of families in 1948 earned between $2,000 and $3,000, and a much larger percentage of Americans, 33.6%, earned $3,000 to $5,000. The latter group, which grew rapidly from 1.2 million people in 1928 to 14 million in 1948, was the foundation of an incipient middle-class majority. At the top, families making over $5,000 a year, over $5,000. You hear me? Over $5,000. A lot of money back then. Was the families making over $5,000 a year nearly tripled from 8% to 20.8%. During the 50s, worker compensation rose 88% while productivity doubled. Mind you, organized labor represented 35% of the American workforce by the 50s. So what does this tell you? All this mumble jumble of facts. What does this say? This says that teabagger, globalist, and Reaganite reactionary trickle-down economics and globalism and open borders and labor hating does not strengthen capitalism. It is the best antidote to the siren calls for socialism and communism and fascism and everything else. And offline, I try to argue with some analysts that we know and we've spoken with, and they don't get it. They think, oh, unions didn't do this. It was just the productivity of capitalism. No, thank you. It was federal intervention that quelled or curbed excesses in financial speculation. It was union organizers, whether we like them or not politically, who fought and even died to secure the rights of the working man. It was things like tariffs that built up American industrial base. It was big government when needed. It was not teabaggery. This is the history that Rush Limbaugh and Glenn Beck and all these other propagandists for the corporate and globalist right have suppressed from us. What say you, dear friend Herschel?
Is that this is what I tell conservatives. If you're still a conservative listening to, and by that I mean like your standard run-of-the-mill Republican, it wasn't the communists and it wasn't the socialists that sent your job overseas, that broke your union, that destroyed the family, that set the price of living up astronomically high while wages have stagnated for the last 40 years. That had nothing to do with communism, socialism, or big government, because we live in the era of a small. Our government is the smallest it's been as far as regulations of the economy since the 1920s. Now, Nevin, I'm not, I'm sure that you're aware of what also happened in the 1920s. And people forget this part. I want to explain this. People think the 1920s, they think the Great Depression, they think a couple of other things. But here's the thing. The Great Depression didn't start until, 1929? I think it was.
1929, that's correct.
Yeah. So the reason that we called it the Roaring '20s is because our economy was running wide open. We were making money like people have never made before, and the stock market was making gains that they did not even think was possible when they run the first ticker tape machines in the 1800s. And everybody was talking about this era of grand U.S. prosperity that was never going to end, and everything was going to be great from here on out, and then it all come down. Because what people have to understand is that when you got the regulations and you got these safeguards that keep this country from running over the cliff, and by God, we're on a cliff, eventually you're going to fall off. And what you've seen is that when they were buying stocks on mortgage, on bank loans, when they were trading such high volatility, stocks with such volatility that even today people wouldn't touch them. When they introduced credit in a way that Americans had never seen it, and had Americans piling up debt faster than at any point in history, it all comes down. And we're starting to see it. A bunch of nobodies on Reddit have nearly crashed the United States economy. This is the libertarian wonderland that we're supposed to have, and where is this wonderland at? This is Reaganism. This is Milton Friedmanism. What you're living in is not communism, and it's not socialism. This is the ugly ass side of unregulated capitalism that you have to look right at, and stop blaming it on I hear people, they talk about, the leftists, they've just ruined everything. By God, look, I'm not a fan of a lot of leftists. I'm not going to sit here and say that I want, that they haven't got their own problems. But by God, they're not been the ones in charge. The people that are in charge are the ones that write the checks, and the ones that write the checks are not communists. And they damn sure ain't socialist.
Yeah, and this is the thing where I have problems with even really otherwise astute analysts on the China, the threat of China and Russia and their allies throughout the world. People like J.R. Nyquist, who normally is very astute on the foreign threats, the domestic threats, but they think that the left controls the United States. And what I would argue, if anything, based on what I've covered in my books and shows and different interviews, is that actually the corporate right has dominated American policy and the American political system, and even the economics departments to a degree in universities too as well, I might add, just to name a few. Are there areas where in academia where the left has a greater say? Obviously, social sciences, education. I went through education. I got my first master's degree in education. There absolutely were professors of the left to far left. But the fact of the matter is who controls the government is a capitalist oligarchy, essentially, or a private sector oligarchy. And actually a lot of the policies of the teabagger Reaganite globalists, and I'm sorry, I'm going to use that word. I'm letting my hair down in these podcasts. No more stiff-lipped Nevin. I'm tired of it. I'm going to read you a couple of quotes here, and I'm going to ask your opinion, a rhetorical question. Joe Sims, who's a high-level official of the Communist Party USA, he reflected, okay, thoughts I had made a bad choice after the fall of the Berlin Wall, meaning choosing communism, were tempered by the recurring economic downturns, the unrelenting attacks on labor, the heartless shredding of the social safety net, and to top it off, the wholesale robbery inflicted on blacks, Latinos, and senior citizens during the bank's subprime ripoff. Nothing like Wall Street barons stealing billions to revive your revolutionary vigor. That I made the right choice was recently reinforced once again by General Motors' closing of its Lordstown assembly plant. Yet another blow to the Youngstown area's finest workers. Want to produce more communists? Keep it coming, GM. And I can give you other quotes from neo-Nazis and Marxist-Leninists that say the same damn thing. Because if we had our model of stakeholder capitalism and Herschel, I gave you those statistics from way back when, from the 40s, 50s, 60s, and even to some degree in the 70s, where you had stakeholder capitalism and the country built on the combination of tariffs and free enterprise, tempered with New Deal and progressive legislation, and you had a true centrist model of government and economics. And as Daniel Bell, famous sociologist, said, Marxism, Marxist economics, communist economics experienced a decrease in the appeal because, as he said, and others have said, Herbert Marcuse, a neo-Marxist, said, because unrestrained capitalism was abolished. So the communist apparatus in the United States had to go into other areas to cause problems, issues related to women's rights, civil rights, the oppression of our black brothers and sisters, et cetera, because communists are always sniffing around looking to cause problems and looking for fissures in society. But we were on the road to solve our economic problems, where even by the 60s, the African Americans were doing well. So now when you have globalism and teabaggerism imposed in the economy, as I read Joe Sims' quote, he was thinking, oh, Berlin Wall, communism may suck. And then big corporate teabagger Reaganite capitalism continued to roar and ravage America. And it brought him right back to communism and a lot of other people. Well, what do you think of that? Am I crazy? Am I losing my mind?
No, you're not crazy. And it's a simple concept. When you put that many people out of work, and not just put them out of work, if the ones that do go on to find new jobs are working longer hours for less money, they're probably in the service industry. They're probably not going to retire because their Social Security isn't going to support them on what they're going to get from their actual job retirement. So these people that used to have these nice jobs, and by all means should still have them nice jobs, are now fry cooks at McDonald's at 65 years old.
Mm-hmm.
You stole a generation of wealth away from the United States with jobs moving overseas, with deregulation, with the corporations just getting to run roughshod over the entire country.
Mm-hmm.
And
exactly,
these people found. Look at Trump. Trump got elected for NAFTA. Trump got elected for the excesses of these big hedge funds in 2008. This is a statistic that I've always been so perplexed by, but it makes sense. How Trump had one of the highest. Okay, I'm going to try to say. I don't know exactly how to word it. I think it was 20%, and I think it might have actually been more, of Trump voters were two-time Obama voters. And I believe it's more, but I think it was 20%.
Right. It was about 20%, and there were about 12 or 13% Bernie Sanders voters that went to Trump. I voted for Trump. You voted for Trump in 2016 because of his history of at least uttering populist sentiments. I had a lot of misgivings about Trump, to be fair, but he really was a better alternative when you looked at his program and his utterances, however undisciplined, compared to Hillary Clinton, who I couldn't trust at all. And then the other teabagger Republican candidates who are teabagger globalists, essentially, for outsourcing free trade with our enemies and all the rest of it. So, yeah, I mean, Trump had 37% of the AFL-CIO vote. I mean, unbelievable.
Yeah, and
But
that's
he
the thing
betrayed it. He betrayed us. He betrayed his populist supporters.
I believe that. No, but that's the thing is that when people get desperate and you take away their future, because look, nobody, if you were not either born into a good situation in this country or you aren't just absolutely gifted enough to get into a nice university, you'll probably end about where you begin. And yes, I know people start businesses, people get better. I'm not saying that improvement doesn't happen everywhere. I mean, I'm better off now than I was a year ago. What I'm saying is that if you look at the disparity between wages and inflation and wages and cost of living, wages, price of just common goods, if you look at the fact that you have to get, if memory serves, if you make $50,000 a year, you're in the 70th percentile in U.S. income earners. The median single income in the United States as of 2019 was $31,314 a year. So that's about $14 and some change an hour. 50. Yeah, it's 15 and some change an hour. So that it gives you a chance. People are always talking about, well, fight for 15 and raising the minimum wage to 15, which is good causes. The problem is that $15 an hour, $30,000 a year isn't enough to live on hardly anywhere in the United States. Once you factor in the cost of homes, this adds up. It adds up in one big system into people just getting totally disenchanted with the system. Our good friend Kenny, kind of a prime example of a guy that's just got so disgusted with the system at times that.
Yeah, we're going to have a great interview with him.
Yeah.
His name is Kenny Stoltman, and he was a communist youth leader in Florida at one time, and he has some very, very interesting, testimony and information to share with our audience. And I also, before we go on to the next topic, but you brought up a really good point with the minimum wage of $15. I do support a raise in the minimum wage, but I prefer what they do in some of the Scandinavian countries, which is you have stronger unions. They technically don't have a minimum wage, but they have such strong unions that they're able to raise wages that way, because $15 an hour might be a lot of money in a rural part of the United States, let's say perhaps in parts of West Virginia, maybe, for example. But $15 an hour in New York City, forget it. You're not going to survive on that. So I think the wages also have to be handled, yes, nationally, but also taking local conditions and local market conditions into mind and into consideration.
Before we go on, Nevin, I want to make one thing, because I know not everybody, me and you talk about this a lot. We talk about economics and we talk about theory behind it. A lot of people don't. So I want to explain something real quickly.
Sure, go ahead.
Median income is not the average wage. That's a totally separate thing. The average wage is when you take every income earner in the United States, you take all the money that they made, and you divide it by it's simple high school or, fifth grade math. You're just averaging out. And they use that number a lot. People say the average wage is going up. Well, that might be true, but that's not a good reflection of actual workers' wages going up, because if a billionaire adds $1 trillion to his wealth and you add $4, well, your average just went way up, but it wasn't because you got any better. Mm-hmm. Median wage is the better thing, because what that means is that if you took every income earner in the United States, from Elon Musk at the top all the way down to the absolute poorest homeless person that couldn't even get a penny at the street corner, and you arrange them, in order of who has the most money, the middle is the median. The median income is $31,000. That means everybody before that median income is making less than $31,000 a year. It's, again, I'm not great at explaining it, but what I'm trying to get the point across is that is half of the damn country is making $31,000 or less. And you have to get to $70 or the 70th percentile before you get past $50,000, which is $25 an hour. Mm-hmm. So 70% percent of the country is making less than $25 an hour, and it's just don't even argue with me at this point anymore. We're getting
Well, and
screwed.
I think not only do we have to abolish right to work and really seriously consider adopting Franklin Roosevelt's Second Bill of Rights into our Constitution and mandated it for the states, for the state governments and local governments as well, but there's another factor too, and we have to also address uh, the issue of really shareholder primacy versus the old stakeholder capitalism as well as a rational economic nationalism. And we really have to claw back and really reverse and throw in the trash can of economic history and economic policy. This Milton Friedman, Theodore Levitt, Arthur Michael, I believe it was either Arthur or Michael Jensen and others who proposed this idea that the chief fiduciary responsibility of a corporation should maximize shareholder value. And that wasn't always the case in the United States before the 1980s. It was all about the stakeholder model. And that became very, very apparent with the rise of unions, the rise of the New Deal. And the whole country did very well, as we talked about before. And what we have to do is we have to claw back on shareholder primacy, reintroduce by revising corporate law this idea of stakeholder capitalism and disincentivizing unproductive forms of financial speculation, things like derivatives and credit default swaps and other things that nobody the fuck understands. Even half the people on Wall Street, I'm told, don't even understand the whole thing fully because it's based upon mathematical abstract equations, from what I understand. That needs to be disincentivized, all that crap, and instead production needs to be re-incentivized through changes in tax policy, trade policy, education policy, infrastructure policy, and immigration policy. So I wanted to conclude that part, that discussion and that point. And now I'm going to switch a little bit to foreign affairs, which of course I always love. I love foreign affairs. Now, some of the Republicans, to their credit, like Ted Cruz, for example, senator from Texas, has really, during and after the Trump era, has really become a hardliner on the threat of communist China. And, I think that's great that Senator Cruz is doing that. And I think he needs to be applauded for that. But I got to tell you, something bothers me about that, Herschel. Something's really sticking to my craw about that. And I'm going to tell you what it is. He wasn't always hardline on China. I'm going to play this YouTube clip. Folks, this is the first time I'm playing a YouTube clip on this interview, so I hope it works. If it doesn't work, this is an interview from October 3rd, 2011 between Laura Ingraham, who's really good on issues related to, trade and labor arbitrage resulting from immigration and the threat of communist China. Other issues I kind of disagree with her on strongly. But she challenges Ted Cruz when he was a Republican Senate candidate in Texas on the issue of predatory trade practices by communist China. And I'm going to start.
Not getting any sound on this end, Nevin.
What's that?
I said we're not getting any sound on this end.
Oh, you're not getting any sound on this end? Okay.
All right. We'll try it again later.
Okay, but the gist of it is that that Ted Cruz opposed a anti-currency manipulation bill that would have levied or imposed tariffs on goods that were dumped by communist Chinese state corporations and their subsidiaries into the American market, which hurt American industries. And Ted Cruz, a little background on him, He is a Reaganite. When he was in his political formative years, he was a big advocate of free market economics. He took in Ludwig von Mises, Milton Friedman's. These are libertarian globalist economists. And he got funding in his first Senate campaign from the Club for Growth and Goldman Sachs, which are organizations, companies which have supported free trade with Russia and China, or in the case of Goldman Sachs, did a lot of business with communist China for a long time, one of the first financial investment firms that dealt with China back in the mid 1990s. So Laura Ingraham really grilled him on it, to her credit, and really Ted Cruz really didn't perform very well in that interview. But what's interesting is that all of a sudden Ted Cruz is his hawk on China, and but before he wasn't. He barely addressed China. And China was a threat back in 2011. China was a threat in 2001. China was a threat in 1981. It was a threat in 1971. It was a threat in 1951. So why do you think Mr. Ted Cruz, good old rootin' tootin' American patriot, why would he shift gears on China from being a China appeaser on trade that was enriching communist, atheistic, Christian murdering China, versus now where all of a sudden he's this prophet of prophet warning about the threat of communist China? What do you got for me, Herschel?
Well, I think if we rewind the clocks back to, it had been about March of 2016 at the Republican debates, when Trump, what did he call Trump or Cruz's wife fat, or did he call her a whore? I can't remember. It was one of the two.
No, he basically said she wasn't attractive, which was really
That's right.
shitty. I mean, I think she's attractive, actually, but that's besides the point. Trump really launched. I mean, in fairness to Cruz, he really launched Trump launched very scurrilous attacks against Cruz and his family.
Oh, and that's the thing is Ted Cruz got embarrassed on national television, went on to the Republican National Convention and told Republican voters across the country to vote your conscience. And now all of a sudden he's Trump's little butt buddy that just waits on him like a chihuahua following its owner wherever it goes, because Ted Cruz figured out one key thing in politics is don't go against the grain. And he figured out, probably because he doesn't have as much political capital as somebody like Mitch McConnell, that there's no chance of Ted Cruz winning Texas without Donald Trump. And you've seen that in the fact that he damn near lost that Texas Senate race to Beto O'Rourke.
Mm-hmm. That's right. I remember that.
So Ted Cruz figured out that there's nothing you can do. You can't go against Donald Trump. And whether or not he believes in China, I couldn't say, but I damn sure know that he's flipped every position he's had. You know, he was elected in that wave of teabaggery back in 2010 during the Obamacare debates. Or was it 2000? Yeah, it was 2010 that he was involved in that Tea Party movement, if I remember right.
Yeah, he was big with the tea. He was a Tea Party senator, essentially.
Yeah. You know, and he was just ranting and raving about freedom and democracy and the Constitution, but he was more than damn happy to sell your damn jobs right downriver to China, the most authoritarian and oppressive regime in the world behind North Korea and maybe Saudi Arabia. Actually, I would probably say Saudi Arabia, North Korea, then China. I'll give China a little bit of credit.
They all bad suck.
Yeah. I mean, but at that point, is it really that much better? You know, whether or not you're getting your head cut off for being gay, or you're getting shot because you had said the wrong thing about Chairman Mao and his dearly begotten past. Sorry, I want to keep my passport to China just in case I ever want to go there. Can't say anything bad about them.
Well, I'm going to say everything bad, because until they overthrow communism in China, fuck China. Fuck the Chinese Communist Party. And
the Republican Party has never been anti-business. And China is good business. And that's the thing. This is what I say to Republicans. Reagan is as responsible for you losing your good jobs as any Democrat that you've ever come up with. And they do like this. And look, well, I'd say Bill Clinton's probably tied with Reagan because he did have his hand on the signature, or he did sign NAFTA. But this is the thing. Republicans will always follow the money every damn time. You know why nothing got done in the Senate? And I would say this. This is maybe a little bit of speculation, but I believe it with about everything I've got. Nothing got done in the Senate on trade with China because Mitch McConnell's wife runs a huge import-export business out of China. Make no mistake, people. Mitch McConnell, during the Trump presidency, was the single most powerful man in America. It wasn't Donald Trump. It wasn't any elite. Mitch McConnell wielded power in that Senate that was never constitutional, blocking bills at every turn because he just didn't care. Or
he didn't agree with them, even though they were popular with the American public.
Yeah, dragging his damn feet during the times that we needed some answers, we needed leadership. He never helped Trump. And for what it's worth, I agreed with Trump's economic views about ending all of these entangled trade relations with China, Southeast Asia, South America, Mexico, that have absolutely gutted the American middle and working class. I agreed with that. So Mitch McConnell done the one damn, stop the one damn thing that I cared about, and that most Trump supporters did care about. And that's what it's all about, is that these people like Mitch McConnell, and like Ted Cruz, and like Ron Johnson, and like Lindsey Graham, they don't have morals. They're not the party of Christianity. They are the party of whoever's paying the most money at the time. And they will happily sell you downriver over and over. And if you don't believe me, look at their voting record. Look at what Republicans do when they're in office. They do nothing. In 2010, when the Republicans won back the House, it was this big thing about how they were going to repeal and replace Obamacare, even though the ink had barely dried on it. In 2016, wouldn't you know that they hadn't come up with a damn thing to actually replace Obamacare with?
Well, you know what the Republican Party health plan is with most of them. You know what it is? It is basically either fuck you, die, or GoFundMe. That's their health plan.
Oh, yeah.
Next.
And that's the thing is that, look, I've got my serious problem with the Democrats, and I definitely believe that there's hardly a Democrat alive today that carries on the spirit of FDR. But I mean, what do you want me to say nice about the Republican Party? That they fake their way through elections, claiming to be this party of morality, and yeah, they never say directly that they're Christians, but we all know it. We all know that the Republican Party is the party of Christianity, at least in American politics. And they'll wave them Bibles and they'll run around talking about the evil Democrats. And at the end of the day, they didn't touch abortion. They didn't touch any of these other big things about immorality going across this country because they know that they never had any real plan to fix any of it. They took advantage of the poor and the desperate and the crazy to help fuel a machine that the United States hasn't seen in generations. And now that Trump's gone, most of them are just back to business as usual. Mitch McConnell is going to continue to block anything and everything. Ted Cruz is an ass, and Ron Johnson and Lindsey Graham don't want to do anything other than make sure they get richer. That's the Republican Party way. Do nothing.
Yeah, Mitch McConnell, the Senate under Mitch McConnell is actually worse than a constipated intestine. It's so much blockage in there.
Yeah. And this is the thing, because
you got to admit that was a little funny.
That was pretty funny, Nevin. I'll give you that. But this is what my plea. I'm not telling you to stop being a conservative, because if you've got your moral views for you, I cannot tell you how to think, what to think, or what to believe. This is my plea to you. Look around and ask, where are these Republicans at? What are they doing anymore? They never. They were big on gun rights. Trump, he run on a campaign of strengthening gun rights in the United States. We never got national concealed carry. Never even pushed for it. Didn't make a floor vote on the House, if memory serves. We never got the Hearing Protection Acts that would have taken suppressors off the NFA. We never got any fixes of the NCIS system that actually kind of streamlined the process. We didn't get a streamlined ATF. We got none of that. But now that Trump's not in office, all I've seen every day on my Facebook feed and what little radio I listen to is vote for Republicans, support Republicans to stand up against the evil Democrats that are stealing your guns away from you. It's like, where the hell were you guys for the last 4 years? You got elected. And this is the thing. This is the biggest disparity. And this is definitely just all U.S. politics in general. Is they're not public servants. They're public spokesmen. They run a popularity contest saying the right things to come in and then do absolutely nothing because they know that if they beat the right cultural issues and they wave their Bibles and their flags and talk about how grand America is, that people will vote for them over and over and over again, even when it costs you your job, your kids' schools, your infrastructure, all of that.
Exactly. When you strip it all away, Herschel, what you said is so right on point, brother. Basically what it is you strip all away the culture war stuff. And believe me, I'm a big Second Amendment proponent. I mean, I'm just going to put that out there. I do believe people should have their right to own guns privately. I'm going to put that out there. With that stated, when you strip away all the culture war issues, the God, guns, and gays thing, strip it all away was the Republican Party. They're basically the propaganda service, one of the many lobbying arms for the property rights of the private sector oligarchs. That's all they care about. There's a really good quote before we wrap up the show, because we're almost at the hour and 30 mark, believe it or not. I can't believe how fast we've been going. I'm going to close this segment and then we'll have our conclusions, but I'm going to read you a quote by the author Thomas Frank. He's a commentator and a progressive populist historian. He wrote that, well, and I quoted in my book, he wrote that since conservatism viewed capitalism as carrying, quote unquote, within it the spark of the divine, the, quote, interests of business are central and defining, while every other aspect or strategy of the movement is mutable and disposable. Patriotism is a virtue under all circumstances until the time comes to declare the nation state a relic of the protectionist past. Even communism itself becomes perfectly acceptable when, as in Red China, it mutates into a way of enforcing market discipline. The needs of business stand like a rock. All else is convenience, opportunism, a bit of bourgeois, generated by some focus group session and forgotten the instant it is no longer convincing. Fundamentally amoral, capitalism is loyal to no people, no region, no heroes. Really, once they have exhausted their usefulness, not even to the nation whose flag they pretend to worship. And then, my friend, that's what it comes down to with modern conservatism. And sure, there are exceptions, like great publications like the American Conservative. There are some people that break the orthodoxy, like sometimes Cliff Kincaid of America's Survival and others, but the main line of the conservative movement is just what I read you, that quote from Thomas Frank, who was, when he was much, much younger, as a kid from Kansas, he was active as a conservative Republican.
Yeah. Like I said, usually I try to think, sorry.
That's okay.
I try to always offer optimism and offer solutions, but at this point, I'm not going to offer these. Hoping and praying that the Republican Party is just going to abandon Reaganism and adopt values of true Americanism, you're wasting your damn time. You don't have enough money to get their ear, and the sooner you realize that, the better off you'll be. If this country has any damn hope of surviving and any damn hope of any, I mean, even if it survives at its current rate, it'll be a shell of itself. If this country has a hope of surviving, conservatives and liberals and communists and progressives and everybody else in between is going to have to come together and say, look, it's our backs, our blood, and our time that built this country and maintain it. And when we remember that, and we make them remember that, then things change. Nevin, I know we're about to wrap up, but I'd be remiss if I didn't mention what the glory that's happening at GameStop right now.
Yes.
The absolute greatest thing in the entire history of American economics. It is the absolute pinnacle of how to get back at these people. So I'm not going to go through the 4-hour analysis of how everything happens and how short stocks and insurance bets and all that works. What you need to understand is this. Short bets or short stocks or shorting the market are a way of parasiting off of a good company. So what they do is they buy up a good company stock, then they take out these massive short bets, and then they drive the price of the company down, either by intentionally bad business decisions or just out and out corporate corruption. They drive these companies into the dirt, and then when the company's stock's worth nothing, they sell the shorts and make billions of dollars in profit off of it. So these bunch of kids from Reddit get together and realize that this is what's been happening to GameStop the last couple of years. Now, GameStop has never been a good company. It's been a joke around across the internet for a long time. But it was becoming an intentionally bad company. And these bunch of kids, I say kids, they're grown men, grown women, and people across this Reddit thread said, man, there's an awful lot of short bets. 139% of the it was 139% of the stocks that was even available. So they had these absolutely massive and infinitely risky bets. Now, in a normal year, this would have worked out just fine, and they would have walked off into the sunset a few $billion richer. This is where the Reddit guys come in. So the Reddit guys go around and buy massive amounts of the GameStop stock because it was trading for about $4 a stock at one point. So they could get quite a bit of it. Now, all of a sudden, them short bets that would have netted billions cost them $90 billion in counting and bankrupted Century and Capital. And I have never in my entire life, as long as I have lived, been this happy about something that happened on Wall Street. For the first time in maybe American history, we threw a haymaker at the biggest hedge funds on Wall Street, and they're laying on the mat. We're winning. And they know we're winning because the first thing they did was run to Biden's White House and run down and start crying about, oh, we need regulations because these people are doing mean things to the billionaires. And this is what I'll say to the billionaires. Get fucking wrecked because we're beating you and we're not going to give up. To all those people that are on Reddit, to all those people that are still holding that GameStop stock and AMC stock and Nokia stock, please, God, hold on to it for as long as you can.
You know, in fact, I think what I want to do, my daughter loves to shop at places like GameStop so she could get those pops, those collectible items that are exaggerations of all these movie characters and all the rest of it. I think I'm going to buy her 2 or 3 pops instead of 1 pops at GameStop and go there tomorrow just to kind of celebrate and show my solidarity and support. What I say to those Wall Street plutocrats for selling out the country? Fuck you too. To quote Colonel Slade on Ascent of a Woman, which is a great movie, by the way.
You know, Nevin, have you ever, and I know we got to wrap it up, so I'm not going to say anything more.
We're having fun.
Have you ever seen anything this glorious in your entire life?
Other than meeting my girlfriend, who's a lovely woman, no, this is amazing. And this could be on an optimistic tone, and it might take a generation, but these things like the teachers' strikes, the people waking up to the threat of China and Russia, realizing that the Cold War has never ended, the GameStop with issue with Wall Street, all these different things. It's showing that the people do have power. And we're not as powerless as we think we are. All we have to do is get some real good organizers on the ground. For anybody who in the future and the present has listened to this podcast, you have a lot of money, but you want to maintain capitalism by reforming it, you're a strong American patriot or a civic nationalist, this is the time to really step up and use your resources for the betterment of the American people and the American nation so we can preserve a much better country for your children and grandchildren for generations to come. And I just wanted to say this is probably one of the best shows we've had. I think our format of picking little news nuggets and fun facts, you and I think works out well. I'm hoping maybe to talk a little bit about next time, a little bit about Russia. I know you want to add some news nuggets and facts, and also give a little report card on how Biden is doing, the things we're concerned about and we don't like about Biden, and the things we probably will be saying, hey, Biden did this correctly, and other things that we're very concerned about and we don't like Biden. So, and I look forward to hearing some of your news nuggets and your little factoids, fun facts for next weekend or even earlier. I understand you're gonna be free some evenings, so maybe we can do a show even before Saturday night, depending on our time.
That'd be nice. Well, Nevin, it's been a pleasure. To everybody that watched this video, I want to say thank you. Me and Nevin are really trying to build something here. If you find yourself interested in becoming involved in populist politics, you feel free to find me and Nevin on Facebook and message us. There's an email on our Facebook page if you like the old formatted way of doing it. But I promise you, is that we'll take anybody right now as long as you believe that the American worker is getting screwed and we've got to change some stuff to make it better.
Yeah, we would accept conservatives, liberals, LGBT people, religious Christians, Jews, blacks, Hispanics, new immigrants who feel a love for America, whatever. We need this to be in together. We need to be together. We are in this together against the twin forces of extremism, of communism, and neo-Nazis and Russia and China and their allies, and as one pillar of potential and actual deprivation of freedoms and opportunities and human rights and life. And then on the other side, corporate capitalism and their lickspittles all over the political realm that are also oppressing us. We're in this together. Again, I enjoyed this podcast and I look forward to our next one.